What would you do if one man's choice changed how the world saw government surveillance forever? That's the story of Edward Snowden. Some call him a brave whistleblower. Others call him a dangerous traitor. His actions shook the world, exposed hidden truths, and raised questions we're still asking today. But here's the twist. Whether you see him as a hero or a villain depends on how you view freedom, privacy, and security. Stay with me until the end of this video, because by then, you'll have the full picture and maybe even the answer to the question, Edward Snowden, hero or traitor? Edward Snowden wasn't born famous. He wasn't a politician or a celebrity. He was just a regular guy who grew up in North Carolina and later moved to Maryland. From a young age, he had a deep interest in computers. He taught himself programming, network systems, and security. What set him apart was his obsession with understanding how technology really worked. That passion would eventually give him access to some of the most guarded secrets in the world. Snowden never finished high school in the usual way, but that didn't stop him. He earned his GED and took classes at a community college. His skills with computers were so advanced that formal degrees didn't matter much. He joined the U.S. Army Reserve for a short time, but an injury cut that path short. Instead, his real career began when he entered the world of intelligence work. First, Snowden worked as a security guard at an NSA facility. From there, he moved into technical roles at the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA. His reputation grew as someone who could solve complex problems. Later, he became a contractor for private companies working with the National Security Agency, the NSA. This is where things began to change. As a contractor, Snowden had access to vast amounts of classified information. He wasn't at the very top, but he was high enough to see what was happening behind closed doors. His job gave him a front-row seat to the digital machinery of surveillance. He could see how data was being collected, how systems were built, and most importantly, how much power was being concentrated in government hands. To many, Snowden looked like an ordinary analyst. To him, though, the deeper he went, the more troubled he became. He began to notice patterns that didn't sit right with him. This wasn't just about monitoring foreign threats. It was something much bigger, and it involved millions of ordinary people who had no idea what was being done with their private information. By the time Snowden was in his late 20s, he was already holding the keys to a digital vault filled with secrets. What he discovered there would set him on a path that changed his life and the world forever. In 2013, Edward Snowden made a choice that would shake the world. He leaked a collection of secret documents to journalists. These weren't ordinary files. They revealed massive government surveillance programs that no one outside the intelligence community was supposed to know about. So what did he actually expose? At the heart of it was the National Security Agency, the NSA. Snowden showed that the NSA was collecting phone records from millions of Americans. Not just suspected criminals or terrorists, ordinary people. Every call, every number dialed, and even the time and length of conversations were being stored. Imagine your entire call history sitting in a government database, waiting to be searched. But it didn't stop there. The leaks also revealed a program called PRISM. Through PRISM, the NSA had direct access to data from big tech companies, names we all know like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple. Emails, photos, chat messages, and browsing history were all being swept up. Most people had no idea their personal online lives could be watched on such a scale. And this wasn't just about Americans. Snowden's files showed that the surveillance was global. The NSA and its partners were tapping into internet cables, spying on world leaders, and monitoring people across the planet. One leak revealed that even the personal phone of German Chancellor Angela Merkel was being tracked. Allies, enemies, ordinary citizens. No one was truly off limits. The scope was staggering. For the first time, people everywhere saw proof that modern surveillance wasn't just a tool against terrorists. It was a system capable of mapping entire societies down to the smallest detail. Snowden's revelations forced people to ask, is this about safety or is it about control? Governments defended the programs as necessary for national security. They argued that collecting massive amounts of data could help stop attacks before they happened. But critics saw it differently. To them, this was proof of unchecked power, where privacy had become an illusion. In just a few weeks, Snowden transformed the global conversation. He opened a door to secrets the U.S. government had worked hard to keep hidden. And once that door was open, it could never truly be closed again. Why would someone risk everything to reveal secrets this big? Edward Snowden wasn't after money. He didn't try to sell the documents to foreign governments. His decision came from something deeper, his belief that the public had a right to know what was happening in the shadows. Snowden said he acted because he saw a dangerous pattern. The government was using advanced technology not just to protect people, but to watch them. To him, it felt like the balance between security and freedom had tipped too far. Privacy, one of the core rights of a free society, was being quietly erased. And the worst part? Most citizens had no idea it was happening. In interviews, Snowden explained that he didn't want to live in a world where everything you say, do, or even think online could be tracked. He believed that if people were going to lose that level of privacy, they at least deserved to make that choice themselves with full knowledge of the facts. Keeping it secret, he argued, was dishonest and dangerous. He also believed there was little hope of fixing the problem from the inside. If he tried to report it through official channels, his concerns would be buried. The intelligence community was built on secrecy, and secrecy was its shield. By going public, he knew he was breaking the law. But in his eyes, that was the only way to make the truth impossible to ignore. Snowden described his choice in simple terms. He would rather sacrifice his own safety than stay silent. He knew the government would call him a traitor. He knew he could face prison, or worse. But he said his conscience left him no other option. To him, loyalty to the people mattered more than loyalty to the system. Whether you agree with his reasoning or not, it's clear that Snowden's actions weren't impulsive. They were deliberate, calculated, and rooted in a strong belief about freedom. He wanted to spark a global debate about privacy, surveillance, and power. And by all accounts, he succeeded. Not everyone saw Edward Snowden as a hero. To the U.S. government, he was a criminal. After the leaks in 2013, federal prosecutors charged him with espionage and theft of government property. These were not light accusations. If caught and convicted, Snowden could face decades in prison. Officials argued that Snowden's actions weren't just about exposing programs. They claimed he put national security at risk. By releasing sensitive documents, he gave valuable information not only to the public, but also to America's enemies. Terrorist groups, they said, could now learn how the NSA operated and use that knowledge to avoid detection. Many intelligence leaders insisted that Snowden's leaks damaged critical relationships with allies. When world leaders discovered that the U.S. had been spying on them, trust was broken. Diplomatic ties were strained, and some governments openly criticized Washington. For American officials, Snowden wasn't just a whistleblower. He was someone who embarrassed the country on a global stage. They also pointed to the sheer scale of the leaks. Snowden didn't release one or two documents. He handed over hundreds of thousands. Critics said this was reckless. If his true goal was only to inform the public, why release so much classified information at once? To them, this looked less like responsible whistleblowing and more like a massive betrayal of trust. Even President Barack Obama, while acknowledging the need for surveillance reforms, condemned Snowden's method. Obama argued that there were legal ways to raise concerns, and that taking secrets straight to the media crossed a dangerous line. Others agreed, saying that every democracy needs both transparency and security, but Snowden had chosen to throw security aside. To this day, government officials stand by their view. Snowden is not a hero. He is a fugitive who broke the law, endangered lives, and weakened America's defenses. His story, in their eyes, is not about courage, it's about betrayal. And that's the heart of the debate. Was Snowden exposing wrongdoing, or was he giving away tools that kept people safe? That question would divide not only governments, but also the public around the world. For every person who calls Edward Snowden a traitor, there's another who calls him a hero. To his supporters, Snowden isn't a criminal at all. He's a whistleblower who risked everything to defend freedom. Supporters argue that Snowden revealed truths people had the right to know. Governments were secretly building systems to monitor everyday life, yet no one had given their consent. By leaking the documents, Snowden pulled back the curtain. He showed ordinary people just how much of their private world was being watched. In the eyes of his backers, that act wasn't betrayal, it was public service. Privacy advocates around the world praised him. Organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation and Amnesty International defended his actions, calling him brave. They said his leaks sparked a global debate about surveillance, forcing governments and tech companies to face questions they had avoided for years. Without Snowden, they argue, people would still be blind to how much power intelligence agencies had quietly gained. Many also point to the changes that followed his revelations. Courts in the U.S. later ruled that parts of the NSA's phone surveillance program were illegal. Laws were adjusted, oversight increased, and tech companies strengthened their encryption to protect users. None of this, supporters say, would have happened without Snowden taking that first step. To them, the argument that he endangered national security doesn't hold up. They believe the government's real concern wasn't safety, it was exposure. What Snowden damaged wasn't America's ability to defend itself, but its ability to operate in secret without scrutiny. Snowden supporters see him as part of a long tradition of whistleblowers who stood up when others stayed silent. They compare him to figures who challenged powerful systems in the past, often at great personal cost. What makes him different is the scale of the truth he revealed, and the price he continues to pay for it. In their eyes, Snowden is not hiding in shame, but living in exile because he chose principle over comfort. They see him as a man who gave up his future so that millions of people could wake up to the reality of mass surveillance. After releasing the documents in 2013, Edward Snowden knew he couldn't go back. Returning to the United States meant immediate arrest and a trial that he believed would be stacked against him. So he fled. His journey took him first to Hong Kong, where he met with journalists and passed on the files. But soon, pressure from the U.S. government made it clear he couldn't stay there. Snowden then tried to travel to Latin America, seeking asylum in countries that had offered protection. But on the way, his passport was revoked. He became stranded in Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport, caught between borders, living in legal limbo. For weeks, he was stuck there, unable to move freely, until Russia granted him temporary asylum. That temporary stay turned into something much longer. Over time, Russia extended his residency permits, and in 2020, he was granted permanent residency. 2 years later, in 2022, Snowden was even granted Russian citizenship. Today, he lives in Moscow with his wife, Lindsay Mills, and their children. But exile has come at a heavy cost. Snowden left behind his home, his family in the U.S., and any chance of a normal life. He remains wanted by American authorities, facing charges that could put him in prison for decades if he ever returns. To this day, the U.S. government has not pardoned him, despite petitions and public campaigns. Still, Snowden has not gone silent. He continues to speak out, giving interviews, writing essays, and even publishing a memoir called Permanent Record. In it, he shares his story, his reasons, and his warning about the dangers of unchecked surveillance. He also comments frequently on global privacy issues, becoming a symbol of digital rights and government accountability. For some, the fact that Snowden lives in Russia adds another layer of controversy. Critics argue it undermines his credibility, while supporters say he had no choice. His path to safety was blocked, and Russia was the only country that opened its doors. So today, Edward Snowden remains a man between worlds. To some, he's a symbol of courage. To others, a fugitive who found refuge in the wrong place. His life in exile shows just how high the price of truth can be. So after everything, where does that leave us? Edward Snowden is one man, but his actions created one of the biggest debates of our time. The question remains, is he a hero or is he a traitor? On one side, you have those who believe Snowden saved democracy from the shadows. They argue that a government watching its people without consent is crossing a dangerous line. To them, Snowden was brave enough to shine a light on that truth. He gave people the knowledge they needed to fight for their rights. Without him, the conversation about surveillance and privacy might never have happened. On the other side, his critics see something very different. They argue that a true patriot works to fix problems from within, not by exposing secrets to the world. They see Snowden as reckless, someone who weakened national security and made the country more vulnerable. To them, his choice wasn't about protecting freedom. It was about breaking trust. The divide runs deep. Some people raise him up as a symbol of resistance. Others call him a cautionary tale. And maybe that's why his story is so powerful. It forces us to think about our own values. Do we put security above privacy? Or do we see privacy as the foundation of freedom itself? The truth is, there's no simple answer. Snowden's story is tangled in politics, law, technology, and morality. Every side has its reasons, and every argument carries weight. What makes it complicated is that both sides claim to fight for the same thing: safety and freedom. So maybe the real question isn't just about Snowden. Maybe it's about us. What kind of world do we want to live in? One where governments hold vast, secret powers in the name of protection? Or one where people demand transparency, even if it means exposing uncomfortable truths? Snowden's story doesn't give us easy answers. Instead, it hands us the responsibility of deciding for ourselves. Hero or traitor? Brave or reckless? Defender of freedom or enemy of the state? The decision, in the end, belongs to you. Edward Snowden's story is more than just headlines from the past. It's a reminder of how fragile the balance is between freedom and control, privacy and security. His choice forced the world to look at questions we often avoid. Who watches us? Who decides what is kept secret? And at what cost? To some, Snowden will always be a hero, a man who gave up his future so that others could see the truth. To others, he will always be a traitor, someone who crossed a line that should never be crossed. But no matter which side you take, one fact remains: his actions changed the world, and the debate he started isn't going away. Now the question is yours. After hearing his story, do you see Edward Snowden as a defender of freedom or as a betrayer of trust? There's no right or wrong answer, only the one you believe in. If you found this video thought-provoking, make sure to like it and subscribe for more deep dives into the people and events that shape our world. And most importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. Edward Snowden, hero or traitor? Because this isn't just history. It's about the choices that will shape our future too.